The search continues for the man accused of shooting and killing his ex-girlfriend at their kid's birthday party. Right now, investigators say Jalin Foreman has been charged with murder, but he's still not in custody. Devon Roming joins us live downtown this morning outside HPD headquarters. Devon, what's the latest in this case?
Well, Ron, we're learning a lot from newly released court documents. These court documents outline what actually took place in the moments leading up to the shooting that left Foreman's ex-girlfriend dead. Now, according to court documents, a witness told investigators Foreman was showing up to drop off birthday gifts for his daughter, but he allegedly wasn't allowed to. Witnesses at the party say Foreman was yelling outside the house before shooting at the home off Loxley Road about 5 times. Court documents also reveal Foreman left the scene in a white Chevy Tahoe, but then moments later came back to the scene yelling things like, "We're going to end this now," and "I will reload, come outside, let's finish this." His ex-girlfriend, 25-year-old Jalen Whitlock, was shot in the face in front of her 2 kids and new boyfriend. She died from her injuries at the scene. Now, Houston police say they responded to child custody calls in the past at the home. Foreman and his ex-girlfriend had 2 children together. Right now, Houston police are asking anyone with information about Foreman's whereabouts that could lead to an arrest to call them. Live in downtown Houston, Devon Roming, KHOU 11 News.
Balloons, laughter, a birthday cake waiting to be cut, but in the next breath, screams, sirens, gunfire ripping through the night. Neighbors would say it sounded like a war zone. Family members would never forget the sight. 2 little girls, frozen in fear, as the celebration of life turned into a nightmare of death. She was only 25, a mother, a daughter, a cousin, the heartbeat of her family, and within minutes, she was gone. Witnesses remember the shouting, the pounding at the door, words no one expected to hear at a child's birthday party, and then silence broken by gunfire. What happened inside that townhouse in Houston, Texas, is not just another story of violence. It is a story that twists love into obsession, protection into danger, and a birthday into a funeral. And the question everyone is still asking, why? Why would someone so close, so familiar, turn the happiest of days into the darkest of nights? Before we go further, let me ask you something. If this can happen in the middle of a child's birthday party, in a family's own home, how safe do you think your home really is? Subscribe right now, because ignoring stories like this doesn't protect you, it blinds you. And if you refuse to subscribe, at least go to the comments and explain why, because silence is what allows tragedies like this to happen again and again. This is the story of a mother, a birthday, and a gunshot that changed everything. Why was she killed? Let's find out.
Welcome to Twisted Crimes Files, where the darkest truths come to light. Stay with us for chilling stories you won't forget, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a case.
Houston police were dispatched to a townhouse on Loxley Road in northeast Houston at 8:35 p.m. The call that came in was frantic, filled with screams and fragments of words. Gunfire, children, she's down. When first responders entered the home, they found 25-year-old Jalen Whitlock Easterling collapsed in her doorway. The smell of birthday candles still lingered in the air, mixing with the gunpowder that had settled over the room. Blood pooled across the welcome mat, where moments earlier guests had stepped inside, carrying balloons and gifts. The scene stunned even seasoned investigators. Streamers clung to the ceiling. A cake sat untouched in the kitchen, its icing cracked where it had been waiting for a knife. And next to it, little paper plates and cups, never used. This wasn't just a crime scene. It was the ruin of a family's most innocent celebration. Police quickly identified the victim, a mother of 2 young daughters, ages 6 and 4. She was known in the community as protective, hardworking, and deeply devoted to her girls. Neighbors remembered her carrying groceries with one child on her hip, the other walking by her side, always smiling through the weight of responsibility. The crime itself was brutal, but it was not without context. This wasn't Houston's first tragedy of its kind. Harris County ranks among the highest in Texas for domestic violence-related homicides. In 2023 alone, more than 200 women in Texas lost their lives at the hands of an intimate partner. The numbers are staggering, but each statistic hides a name, a face, and a family left in pieces. So when police zipped the body bag and marked the casings on the floor, one question lingered louder than the sound of the evidence markers being clicked into place. Was this simply the tragic end of a volatile breakup, or the calculated act of a man determined to control a woman he could no longer claim? That question would become the center of the investigation, and the shadow that still haunts everyone connected to Jalen's final night. Long before headlines reduced her name to another statistic, Jalen Whitlock Easterling was simply Jalin. Born and raised in Texas, she grew up in a family that valued closeness, Sunday dinners, and the kind of resilience you only build by surviving hardship together. Relatives say she was the kind of girl who could light up a room with laughter, but also carried a seriousness when it came to the people she loved. She wasn't afraid of responsibility. In fact, she embraced it. A friend from high school remembered her as both ambitious and nurturing. She wasn't the loudest in the crowd, but when she spoke, people listened. She carried herself with a kind of quiet determination that made others believe she would go far. And in many ways, she did, not through wealth or fame, but through what mattered most to her, her children. By her early 20s, Jalin had become a mother of 2 daughters. Those little girls, just 6 and 4 years old, became her entire world. Photos shared online show her carrying them on her back, their tiny arms wrapped around her shoulders. Smiles wide, eyes sparkling, the bond between them was undeniable. She worked tirelessly to provide stability, making sure birthdays were celebrated, school days were bright, and nights ended with prayers and bedtime stories. Her cousin, Ashlyn McBride, would later write, "Jalin was more than just a mother. She was our rock. She carried so much on her shoulders, but she never let the weight stop her from giving those girls everything she had." That love became her defining trait. She wasn't simply raising her daughters. She was building a future for them, carving out joy wherever she could, even when life threw obstacles in her path. She was also fiercely loyal to her family. Those who knew her best describe her as the first to pick up the phone if someone was in trouble, the first to open her door if someone needed a place to stay. Jalen's warmth drew people in. Her loss, then, was not just the loss of a young mother. It was the tearing away of a cornerstone in her family. But here's where the tragedy deepens. For all her strength, for all her devotion to her daughters, there was a part of her story that no amount of love could shield her from. And it was waiting for her in the form of a man she once trusted. Like so many young women, Jalin longed for stability, someone to share her burdens, someone to help carry the weight of raising 2 little girls. That search led her into the arms of Jalin J. Foreman, a man 2 years older, with whom she believed she could build something lasting. For about a year, their lives intertwined. At first, it seemed promising. There were moments of affection, of small family routines, of promises whispered late at night. To outsiders, they looked like a couple trying to make things work, balancing the chaos of young parenthood with the fragile hope of new love. But beneath the surface, tension brewed. Friends noticed Jalen's possessiveness. What began as concern for her safety slowly revealed itself as control. Questions about who she was with, where she was going, why she wasn't answering quickly enough. Those closest to Jalin would later say that she had begun to pull back to protect herself and her children from the suffocating weight of his jealousy. By mid-2023, the relationship had unraveled. Jalin ended things. For her, it was a decision to reclaim peace. But for Jalin, it seemed to ignite something darker, a refusal to let go. Police documents later revealed that the breakup was followed by months of harassment. Strange appearances near her home, unwanted messages, even accusations of stalking. Then, in July 2024, just 2 months before her death, Jalin was suspected in a drive-by shooting targeting Jalen's townhouse. Bullets ripped into the exterior of her home. A warning, perhaps, or a declaration that the end of their relationship was not the end of his control. Though never formally charged for that incident, investigators listed him as a suspect, and Jalin was left to live in fear. Her cousin Ashlyn would later claim that Jalen's harassment had become relentless, an ever-present shadow over Jalen's attempts to move forward. And she had been trying to move forward because by late summer, Jalin had someone new in her life. This new boyfriend was the opposite of Jalin. Supportive, steady, protective. He didn't replace the father of her children, but he gave Jalin something she hadn't felt in a long time: safety. He was there the night of the birthday party, standing beside her as the uninvited visitor arrived at the door. And when the shouting began, when Jalen's rage filled the air, this boyfriend believed he had no choice but to arm himself too. The stage was set for confrontation, a fragile young family on one side of the doorway, and on the other, a man unwilling to accept that his time in Jalen's life was over. September 12th, 2024. It was a Thursday evening in northeast Houston, still warm from the late summer sun, with children riding bikes through the townhouse complex and neighbors winding down after work. Inside Jalen Whitlock Easterling's home, the energy was different. Bright, hopeful. Balloons floated against the ceiling. A cake, pink frosting with sprinkles, waited on the counter. Paper plates with cartoon characters were stacked neatly on the table. This was not just any evening. It was her oldest daughter's 6th birthday. 6 p.m. guests began to arrive. Family members, a few close friends, and children ready to laugh and play. The little girls darted in and out of the kitchen, giggling, their hair tied with ribbons. For Jalin, these were the moments that mattered most. She greeted everyone with warmth, ensuring the celebration felt special, even if it was modest. 7:15 p.m. The new boyfriend stood at her side, steady and calm, helping her serve food and keep an eye on the kids. To him, the evening was about celebration, but there was also an awareness in his posture, a protectiveness born from months of tension. He knew Jalin had been harassed. He knew who might show up. 7:45 p.m. The atmosphere shifted. A car pulled up outside. Neighbors later recalled hearing the slam of a door, heavy footsteps approaching. It was Jalin Foreman. He carried a small package in his hand, wrapped, a gift he claimed for his daughter. But the tone in his voice, the tightness in his jaw, spoke louder than the gesture. When he knocked, the room fell silent. Jalin froze at the sound. She didn't want him inside. Too much history, too many threats. At the doorway, words were exchanged. Heated, sharp. He asked to come in. She refused. Witnesses say his voice grew louder, echoing up the stairs where children were playing. 8 p.m. He walked back toward his car, as if leaving. But this was no quiet retreat. From a second-floor window, a relative overheard him shouting into the night, "I know where you live, and come at me." The air was heavy, the tension unbearable. Inside, Jalen's boyfriend looked at her, then at the kitchen drawer. He knew what was coming. He stepped away, opened the drawer, and retrieved a gun. His instinct was clear: protect Jalin, protect the children. To him, this wasn't a matter of choice. It was survival. Meanwhile, Jalin gathered her daughters, pulling them close, whispering for them to stay quiet. Their small hands clung to her shirt, as if sensing what she already feared. Tonight would not end with candles and cake. 8:20 p.m. The front door rattled again. Jalin had returned, not with a wrapped gift this time, but with a weapon. Neighbors heard him shout, "We gonna end this now?" It was the moment everything collapsed. The shouting escalated. Guns raised. The girls watched their mother clutch them tight. And then, the sound that would echo in their memories forever. The deafening crack of gunfire tearing through the doorway. At least 5 shots fired, one striking Jalin in the face. She collapsed instantly, falling at the threshold of her own home. The same threshold where she had once welcomed guests, carried groceries, kissed her daughters goodnight. Her boyfriend, desperate, shouted for the children to run upstairs. Their small feet pounded against the staircase as more shots rang out. Upstairs, they hid in a bedroom, covering their ears, their world suddenly filled with the sound of death. Outside, Jalen's car engine roared. Witnesses later said he left, only to circle back, shouting into the night, "I will reload. Come outside, let's finish this," before finally driving away. 8:35 p.m. police arrived. The birthday party had become a crime scene. The little girls were crying upstairs. Guests were frozen in shock. And Jalin, the young mother at the center of it all, lay motionless in the doorway of the home she had fought so hard to make safe. 1 hour earlier, the candles had been ready to light. Now, they were the only things that remained unburned. When officers arrived at the townhouse on Loxley Road, the clock read 8:35 p.m. Their radios crackled with urgency. Reports of a domestic disturbance, possible shots fired, and children present at the scene. The first thing they saw was the door, wide open, splintered from the chaos. Just beyond it, on the threshold, lay the body of 25-year-old Jalen Whitlock Easterling. A single gunshot wound to the left side of her face had ended her life instantly. The vibrant young mother who had been preparing to serve cake to her daughter only minutes earlier was now still, blood seeping onto the welcome mat where balloons had been tied just hours before. Inside, the scene was surreal. Streamers drooped from the ceiling, bright colors clashing with the metallic smell of gunpowder that hung in the air. The birthday cake sat untouched on the counter, its frosting beginning to dry. A party frozen in time, transformed into evidence. Detectives later described the sound of sobs upstairs. The children, trembling, their cheeks wet with tears, clinging to relatives as officers moved them from the bedroom to safety. Downstairs, shell casings littered the entryway. Investigators marked them one by one with bright yellow evidence tints, each number a reminder of how many times the trigger had been pulled. Witnesses told detectives what they had heard: shouting, threats, the words "we gonna end this now," followed by rapid bursts of gunfire. One neighbor who stepped outside after the shots claimed she saw Jalin Foreman pacing near his car, yelling, "I will reload. Come outside, let's finish this." Moments later, he was gone, the sound of his engine fading into the night. First responders tried to process the scene, but even hardened officers admitted the contrast was overwhelming. A child's birthday celebration turned to carnage in a matter of minutes. One officer later said, quietly, "It's the cake that gets to you. The decorations. This was supposed to be the happiest night for those kids. Instead, it's the night their mother died." By the time investigators zipped Jalen's body into a black bag and carried her from the home, the crowd outside had grown. Neighbors gathered on sidewalks, whispering, clutching their children a little tighter, realizing that this wasn't just another news story. It had happened right here in their community. And for Jalen's daughters, the nightmare had only just begun. The image of their mother falling at the doorway would remain with them long after the sirens stopped echoing. This is the point where horror settles into silence, where the questions begin. Who fired the fatal shot? And what drove a man who once claimed love to return with so much hate? The hours after Jalen's death were filled with urgency. Investigators combed the townhouse, photographing every angle, collecting shell casings, and dusting for fingerprints. But this case was never going to be simple. It wasn't a random act of violence. It was a crime steeped in history, in warnings ignored, in a storm building long before that birthday party ever began. From the very start, detectives looked at one man, Jalin J. Foreman, 27 years old, the father of Jalen's 2 children and her ex-boyfriend. Their reasoning was clear. He had motive. He had history. He had already been accused of stalking, harassment, and in July of 2024, he was even listed as a suspect in a drive-by shooting at Jalen's townhouse. Bullets had pierced her home months before, a violent act that terrified her family, though no charges had stuck. Now, in September, her family was sure the same man had escalated from intimidation to murder. The probable cause affidavit laid it out. Witnesses heard Foreman shouting, "I know where you live, come at me, and we gotta end this now." They saw him return with a weapon, and they heard him threaten to reload. For police, the picture seemed clear. Foreman was arrested just days later, on September 16, 2024, after turning himself in to Houston authorities. He was charged with murder and booked into the Harris County Jail. But even as the case moved forward, questions lingered. Because this wasn't just a one-sided attack. Witnesses confirmed that Jalen's boyfriend had armed himself too. He retrieved a gun from the kitchen drawer, prepared for a shootout he believed was inevitable. Gunfire echoed both ways. It was chaos, and chaos muddies the truth. Ballistics reports suggested that multiple weapons were fired that night. Investigators knew Foreman shot, but did every bullet come from his weapon? Or did Jalen's own boyfriend fire the round that struck her down? That question would haunt the investigation and eventually shift its entire trajectory. By April 2025, the case took a shocking turn. Local reports indicated that murder charges against Jalin Foreman were expected to be dropped. Instead, prosecutors focused on lesser charges, deadly conduct, and tampering with evidence. Why? Because new scrutiny fell on Devin Weber, Jalen's boyfriend at the time of the shooting. Weber, already in custody in nearby Fort Bend County on unrelated charges, was suddenly eyed as a possible shooter. Prosecutors hinted that he may face charges tied directly to Jalen's death. For Jalen's family, the twist was devastating. The man they had believed was responsible, the ex-boyfriend they accused of months of terror, might walk free of the murder charge. And the man who had stood beside her that night, who they thought had been defending her, was now painted as a suspect in her killing. Theories multiplied. Was this truly Jalen's act of jealous rage? Or did the crossfire from Weber's weapon take Jalen's life? Was this a cold-blooded execution, or the tragic fallout of two men locked in a gunfight, with a mother caught fatally in between? For the community, the uncertainty only deepened the pain. One thing was clear: Jalin was gone, her children left without their mother. But the question of accountability, the question of who should bear the full weight of justice, remained unsettled. In the days after the shooting, as investigators worked through their theories and prosecutors prepared charges, Jalen's family was left to face a reality that no legal process could soften. Her cousin, Ashlyn McBride, set up a GoFundMe page, her words breaking under the weight of grief. She was a mother of two beautiful little girls. They were her world. Now they're left without her. The fundraiser told a story not in statistics or affidavits, but in raw emotion. A plea for help to cover funeral costs, to support two little girls who had lost the one person who gave their lives structure and stability. Ashlyn's words painted Jalin not as a case file, but as a woman who made pancakes on Sunday mornings, who tied her daughter's shoelaces before school, who sang them to sleep even on nights when she was exhausted. At community vigils, relatives held candles high, their faces lit not just by flame, but by tears. Neighbors embraced, some whispering prayers, others standing in silence, unable to find words. One friend said, she was the kind of person you could call at 2 a.m. and she'd answer. She'd figure out a way to help you, even if she was struggling herself. For her children, the loss was incomprehensible. Too young to fully grasp what death means, they understood only absence, the absence of their mother's arms around them, her voice telling them stories, her laughter filling the kitchen. On the night of the shooting, they saw more than any child ever should. And in the weeks after, their cries echoed the deepest truth of this tragedy. No investigation, no courtroom, no verdict would ever give them back what was stolen. Family members spoke to reporters with voices shaking. She was just trying to live her life. She wanted peace. She wanted to raise her babies. She didn't deserve this. And while the world dissected affidavits, charges, and courtroom motions, her family clung to memories of birthdays past, of simple moments in the living room, of her smile when she watched her daughters play. This is what murder does. It doesn't just take a life. It rips through generations. It leaves children with questions they will spend a lifetime asking. Months have passed since that September night, but the shadows of what happened at Jalen's home still linger. For her family, grief has become routine. For her daughters, absence has become normal. And for the community, unanswered questions remain a wound that refuses to close. After the shooting, attention turned to the courts. At first, all eyes were on Jalin Foreman, the ex-boyfriend who had shown up uninvited with a gun in his hand. But as prosecutors adjusted charges in 2025, lowering murder to deadly conduct and tampering, and shifting focus to Devin Weber, Jalen's boyfriend at the time, the community was left shaken. Who, then, is responsible for pulling the trigger that ended Jalen's life? Was it the jealous ex who had stalked and harassed her for months? Or the boyfriend who tried to protect her, but may have fired a shot in the chaos? The uncertainty has become another layer of pain for a family already broken. Meanwhile, another battle quietly unfolds: custody of Jalen's daughters. Both sides of the family, Foreman's and Jalen's, have sought guardianship of the two little girls. Behind closed courtroom doors, attorneys argue while the children themselves remain at the heart of a storm they never asked to be part of. The community has not forgotten. Vigils continue. Balloons are released into the sky on birthdays. Prayers are whispered at candlelight gatherings. Crime Stoppers has renewed appeals for information, encouraging anyone who knows the full truth about that night to come forward. But still, the mystery lingers. The narrative shifts in courtrooms, but in living rooms across Houston, people replay the same question. How could this happen in front of children? For many in the neighborhood, fear has replaced safety. Neighbors double-lock their doors. Parents clutch their children tighter. And whispered conversations circle around one unshakable thought. If it happened to Jalin, it could happen to anyone. That fear has galvanized action. Advocates for domestic violence victims now speak Jalen's name in rallies, reminding lawmakers and citizens alike that threats ignored often end in funerals. Her story has become a warning, one tied not just to Houston, but to every community where abuse hides in plain sight. And so, the appeal continues. Her cousin Ashlyn, through tears, said, "We just want justice. We just want peace for her girls." But peace is difficult to find when justice itself feels uncertain. In the end, Jalen Whitlock Easterling's story is not only about the night she was taken, but about the silence that allowed danger to grow until it exploded. A mother of two, a life full of laughter, love, and ordinary dreams, erased in seconds on the night her daughter turned 6. But look deeper, and her death is more than one family's tragedy. It is a mirror held up to a society that too often ignores the warnings. The harassment shrugged off as drama, the drive-by dismissed as a dispute, the pleas for peace drowned out until it is too late. And now, nearly a year later, the truth itself remains fractured. Was it an act of vengeance by a jealous ex? Was it chaos unleashed by a man who believed he was defending the woman he loved? In the fog of gunfire, clarity has vanished, and her daughters are left with nothing but questions. What cannot be debated is the cost. 2 little girls robbed of their mother, condemned to grow up with memories too heavy for children to carry. One moment they were singing, waiting for cake. The next, they were orphans of violence. And so we must ask, what will change? Will her name fade into another unsolved file, another story whispered in courtrooms and vigils? Or will it stand as the moment we finally say no more? Because here is the truth no one wants to admit. If it can happen at a birthday party, it can happen anywhere. If a mother can fall in front of balloons and candles, then there is no sanctuary left unless we create it. So don't just watch this story and walk away. Don't scroll past like it's a headline that belongs to someone else. Jalen's daughters will live their whole lives without her. That's permanent. The least you can do is keep her memory alive. Subscribe now, share her story, make her name heard. Because pretending these cases don't matter is exactly how they keep happening. And if you won't subscribe, if you refuse even after hearing this, then step into the comments and tell the world why. Why you believe ignoring her story is worth more than honoring her life. For Jalin, for her children, for every family mourning in silence tonight, someone needs to speak. Let it be you.